Let's see if we can get these old cast iron pans looking like new again. I love a good bargain. Can you relate to that? So when I found these cast iron pans at Value Village for only $11 each, I grabbed them. I found this one a few months ago. It's been sitting around waiting to get cleaned up. And then this one I found just a few days ago. It looks really rough. It's got a lot of built up old seasoning and crud on here, but I could just barely make out a Wagnerware stamp on the bottom. It was made in USA, so I was really pumped to find this one. We tend to use nonstick pans for cooking at our house, especially for eggs, because they're just easy to use, right? And with kids learning to cook, it's made life simpler to just use beginner-friendly tools. But we go through a few of these pans every year because that nonstick coating inevitably breaks down and it becomes hazardous to your health to keep cooking on a broken nonstick surface. But I hate throwing stuff like this in the trash. It feels really wasteful. Whereas cast iron, on the other hand, it will last you for decades, if not centuries, if you treat it right. But there's a learning curve to it though. So I have a modern Lodge cast iron skillet back here, and I use it every now and then for cooking meat and making gravy and sausage and stuff, but I haven't had much luck cooking eggs in it. And I wonder if it's because it has a rougher finish than the old cast iron. This modern cast iron has kind of just a bumpy surface, and this older stuff had a different manufacturing process, and it's as smooth as glass on the cooking surface. And that is what I'm looking for when I find cast iron in a thrift store. A smooth interior inside the pan. These both have that. So even though they don't look like anything you'd want to cook food in right now, we're gonna try to get them cleaned up and ready to use. So stick around, find out if my experiment is successful today. I'm curious to know if you've ever cleaned up an old cast iron skillet and which method you used. Let me know that in the comments below. There are a number of dependable ways that you can get this old seasoning and crud stripped off of here. You can use a lye bath or an electrolysis tank. Those are very effective. Or you can use a lye-based oven cleaner. That can be a very successful method as well. But I didn't want the liability of toxic chemicals, electric currents, trying to find different materials that I don't readily have on hand. If I had a lot of pans to restore, or if I was planning on doing this often, I would probably explore one of those options. But there's another method using the self-cleaning setting on your oven that caught my eye. I will warn you that extreme temperatures could cause your pan to crack. So if you're dealing with an heirloom piece of cookware that you'd be devastated to lose, that method might not be the right one for you. But I found these in my thrift store. If they ended up cracking, I wouldn't be out a ton of money. It wouldn't be the end of the world. So that would be a risk that would be worth it to me. Self-cleaning ovens work by cranking the temperature in your oven to around 900 degrees Fahrenheit or 500 Celsius for about 4 hours. And this effectively just burns all the food residue in your oven, leaving behind ash you can just easily wipe away when your oven has cooled. So if you put your cast iron pans in there during the self-cleaning cycle, all that old seasoning on there, it's just gonna burn off and you'll be left with a powdery residue that washes off. Having said all that, I can't use that method because my oven doesn't actually have a self-cleaning option. Well, it does, but it's not the high heat one that I just talked about. I've only got a steam clean option on my oven. So this is supposed to work by loosening stubborn food residue just with hot steam, then you can wipe it out afterward. It uses a lower temperature to achieve that result, and generally steam cleaning is done at half the temperature of a self-cleaning setting, so it's only 450 degrees Fahrenheit that the oven's gonna heat to. I'm gonna do my best to create a hybrid of the self-cleaning oven method with my oven's steam cleaning setting. So the typical steam clean method for this oven is to pour 1 cup of water in the bottom of the oven, and then the cleaning cycle will run for 30 minutes at 450, like I said. That's a lot less time and a lot less heat than a self-cleaning cycle. And I know that my oven can go to 550 degrees since that's the temperature I bake my pizza at. So I've poured 2 cups of water in my oven. It has a little tray in the bottom where you can pour your water into. And I'm gonna crank the temperature up to 550 degrees. I'm not sure how long I'm gonna run this yet, but we'll just see how long it takes for all that steam to steam away. And I don't want to pour more in there when it's hot because I did try that once and it was a stupid idea. The water was way cooler than the inside of the oven, obviously, and it steamed like crazy. And I saw my life flash before my eyes. I thought I was gonna burn myself. Anyway, I'm gonna put my cast iron into the oven upside down, just so that things aren't pooling inside of it as it loosens off. It'll just kind of fall off. I'm gonna close the door and hopefully that's when the magic happens. In theory, the old seasoning and crud will just loosen off of here and I'll be able to wash and scrape it away. Let me know if you think this is gonna work. I also wanna make sure that I have my ventilation fan running because there can be some pretty nasty odors coming out of your oven when you're cooking off old grease. So I might even crack a window open as well, and I will check back with you when this is done. I thought I'd pop in here, give you a quick update. Things are not going as I had hoped they would. I couldn't get the temperature up to the high temp of 550 that I was aiming for. It just kept venting all of that steam out of the oven, so a lot of heat was going out with it, and I couldn't get the temperature up past like 450 degrees. Go figure. That's how hot the steam cycle runs. So rather than trying to do that, I canceled my temperature, I added more hot water, and then I'm running a cleaning cycle. So we'll see what happens with these pans. They're gonna be in there for about another 15 minutes, and then I will check in with you and show you what they're doing. Oh, also, the smoke detector went off, which was a lot of fun. My kids were screaming a little bit, and yeah, it was a mad scramble to try to get everything to stop beeping and get kids to stop crying. So that's about how it's going. All right, guys, I don't know. My self-cleaning, steam cleaning cycle is done in the oven here. I'm gonna pull them out, see what these pans look like. I would say they don't look really any different than they did before, but I'm hoping that the heat will have helped to loosen some of this old seasoning. I have a putty knife that I'm gonna use to try to scrape it off of this one. I'm actually first gonna set this grosser one back in the oven just to keep it as hot as possible for now. This pan doesn't look as bad. So I'm gonna scrub this up with some baking soda and steel wool and see if I can get that cleaned up a little bit. And then it'll be ready to go in a vinegar bath. Vinegar, I can say the vinegar. Yeah, so I'm gonna clean this one first, put this one back in the oven, and we'll get to work scrubbing the cleaner one. Can you see the change in color here? You can see the exposed metal, raw iron finish there, and then there's still some black seasoning built up there, so this is actually working really well. Still a little too hot for me to handle with my bare hands. I'm gonna try this other pad. See if it works a little better. It's definitely getting cleaner, but there's still a lot of seasoning left on here, and I don't think I'm gonna get very far, much farther with this. So you can see in here, I've gotten rid of a lot of the seasoning that's built up in here, but it's by no means perfect, and I don't think I'm gonna be able to get it all the way stripped down with just the baking soda and the heat. So I think I'm gonna have to break down and go buy some easy off oven cleaner, try that method. So I'm positive that the other pan is not gonna work with this method, but I am gonna pull it out and just chip away some of the really thick flakes that are on there. and get it as clean as I can before I apply oven cleaner to that one too. So I've got my putty knife here, and I just want to see how much of this can get chipped away. It's really thick, and thick seasoning is good when it's even and clean, but this is just really uneven, pitted seasoning. So I want to get as much off as I can. It's coming. Can you see that? Slowly coming off. Man, it's so thick. I'm gonna work on the back for a bit. Let's try a little bit of baking soda. See what happens here. This one's gonna be much more of an undertaking to get it cleaned up. Well, I've gotten a second workout in for the day with all of that scraping. This is how experiments go, right? Sometimes we try things, they just don't work out the way we thought they would. On to the next thing. I'm gonna go get some oven cleaner, and I will see you when I'm back with that. Okay, I'm back from the store. I've got my oven cleaner. I'll just backtrack and tell you that initially I was gonna use spray-on oven cleaner to clean these pans, but I accidentally bought the wrong kind. So I bought this one because it was the only kind I could find in the store with the blue cap. This is a fume-free one. It has no lye in it, and that is the active ingredient that you need in order to lift the crud off of these pans. So I thought, well, I don't want to go back to the store and get the right one. I'll just try to do it in the oven. That wasn't as effective as I had hoped. So here we go. I've got the yellow cap easy off. This is the one you want. It has lye in it, also known as sodium hydroxide, I believe. This is a very strong base. You want to protect your skin when you're using this. So I've got some rubber gloves, and I've got some goggles here to keep my eyes protected. And here's my pans. And I've also got a giant plastic bag here. So I'm gonna put both pans in this bag. I'm gonna spray them on both sides all over, cover them nice and liberally, and then I'm just gonna close them up and leave them for a day and let that cleaner work its magic. Wowee. I'm really glad I'm doing this outside. I don't know if it's getting clogged. Doesn't seem to be wanting to come out very well. There's still a lot of stuff in here. Come on. There we go. I wonder if it's coming out so slowly because it's cold out here. My fingers are cold. I'm having a hard time holding this cold metal can. I think it's only about 1 degree Celsius right now. And obviously this is not intended for using outside in cold temperatures. So maybe that's why it's moving like a slug. I know it's already covered and coated quite well. I just want to make sure that I coat it really liberally. I don't want to have to do this a second time, you know? So I'll just keep dealing with this slow as a turtle spray can. Get a bit more out here. Look at that spot in the bag though. You can see how much of the old seasoning is already stripping off here. That is really good to see. I'll just do a little more. close it up. This is nasty. What am I gonna do? I folded the bag over to try to keep it from getting wet. Here, like that. This is why I wanted a huge bag, is so that I would have parts of it that wouldn't get sprayed. And now I'll clean off my gloves and then I'll get this folded over. And I don't know if I should move it into the garage or somewhere out of the way in the house, but I'll figure that out in a second. These have been sitting for almost 24 hours, so I'm going to pull them out of the bag and see what they look like today. This was the smoother, cleaner one. It looks like all of this seasoning is really loose. And let's take a look at the other one. This looks really promising. I'm hoping that I'll be able to get the rest of this junk off today. So now my next step is to rinse these off with water and start scraping off all of this junk. I'm gonna wash these with soap again. This is the only time you wanna be using soap on your cast iron, is when you're trying to get rid of your old seasoning. When you have a good seasoning, don't put soap on it. So I'll get this dirty bag out of the way. And then I'll get washing. These look really good so far. I think the dirtier one might need another round of oven cleaner, but I'm gonna scrape it up with some, my putty knife and my steel wool and soap, see how clean I can get it. I think the other one is gonna be good enough with cleaning it up in the sink here now. So I'll see how good I can get these and I'll report back to you soon. I just pulled out this Barkeeper's Friend. I've never used this before, but it's supposed to be really good for getting cookware clean. It's a mild abrasive, and so I'm gonna sprinkle that in here as well and see if that helps us to get this even cleaner. Since this is the first time I've done this, restoring an old pan, taking it back to zero and starting over again, I don't know how much cleaner I could realistically get this. This looks pretty good to me. So I'm gonna move on to the next step with this pan, and that is to put it in a vinegar bath. So the oven cleaner was a base that cleaned off all the junk. The lye is a base, whereas vinegar is an acid. You don't wanna mix the two of them. But I've rinsed all of the lye off of here, and now I'm going to soak this in a solution of 1 part vinegar, 1 part water, and that's going to neutralize whatever residue of the lye is left on here from the oven cleaner. And then it'll be ready to season. So I will get my vinegar bath going in this side of my sink, and I'm gonna leave it sit in there for about 45 minutes. And while I let that soak, I can start chipping away at this other super dirty pan. I have scrubbed and scratched away at this as much as I can. I don't think I'm gonna get much more off. So I'm gonna give this another treatment with the oven cleaner. You probably won't get to see the end result of this thing in this video, but I'll continue with the other pan. It's gonna continue its vinegar soak, and we'll get to seasoning it in a little while. Well, we've finished with our vinegar bath here. Look at this thing. It is looking so good. Now, when I take this out of the vinegar bath, I just want to give it a little scrub yet. See if I can work out any more of these spots. I'm gonna rinse it in cold water. This helps to slow down the formation of rust on this bare iron surface. So once I've gotten the pan cleaned off, I just want to dry it. And I'm just using an old stained tea towel for this. And then I want to get some oil on here as quickly as possible to stop that process of oxidation. Oil seals the iron and stops oxygen from interacting with this cast iron, preventing rust from being able to form. So that's what we want, right? We don't want rusty cookware. And I'm using just regular olive oil for this, not extra virgin. You don't need to spend the extra money to get extra virgin olive oil. I have tried seasoning my cast iron with canola oil in the past. It's cheaper, readily available here, but even though it has a higher smoke point than olive oil, it left my pan feeling very sticky. I would not recommend it. I haven't had any issues with using olive oil, so that's my choice for seasoning cast iron. I'm going to just use a dish rag that I don't have feelings for, and I'll use this as my seasoning rag in the future too. I'll just keep it in a Ziploc bag, and this can always be the cloth that I use for seasoning my pans. We just want to get this really liberally coated with olive oil. Get it into all the crevices. And then when it's completely coated, then I'm gonna just try to wipe off any excess that's on there, because you don't want it like soaking in oil. You just want a nice thin film over the whole pan. Then I'm going to be putting it in the oven to set that seasoning in. So I've set my oven to 450 degrees, and I'm gonna put this in there for 1 hour. This thing looks so good. It's so smooth and clean. It feels awesome inside. I can't wait to start using this. Okay, so now I'm wiping it down, just trying to wipe away any of that excess oil. My oven is not quite up to temperature. It's almost ready to go. So after an hour in the oven at 450, I will pull it out and show you the end result of my seasoned pan. Oh, it is ready to go. Okay, I don't know if I said this, I'm putting it upside down. Did I mention that already? That's gonna allow the oil to really penetrate the cast iron, start to build up a good seasoning in the pan, but it's not gonna have any oil pooling on the inside. If we have it upside down, if there's any excess, it's just gonna drip off. I've sealed in 2 new layers of seasoning onto this pan now. I had hoped that I could do it without any chemicals. Obviously that wasn't meant to be, but I'm hoping that we can start putting these pans to use and get a good enough seasoning on here that we can start cooking our eggs on these and then eliminate the use of nonstick pans in our kitchen. So let me know if you would give this a try, or if you thought this would work, or if you didn't think it would work. Obviously my first experiment wasn't very successful. I would also caution you, please, if you're gonna do something like this, do your research on handling these chemicals, like with the oven cleaner and the lye. These are things you don't wanna mess around with. You can end up with chemical burns on your skin if you don't do things safely. So I hope that I mentioned all of the important parts about that, but double check, do your research before you start doing something like this. Thank you for hanging out with me, and I'll see you again next time.